Today, we're going to crochet a telescoping pencil case. This is a zipper pouch for all of your essential supplies that doubles as an upright cup holder. Zipped up, it's the perfect travel case. Unzip and lower the top, and all of your tools are at your fingertips. It's tall, it's roomy, and it's an ideal accessory for any creative person in your life, including you. My name is Jen. Welcome to Windrose Fiber Studio. And let's crochet. For this project, we'll be using a total of 3 skeins of yarn, 1 skein of wool ease. This is a medium weight yarn by Lion Brand. We'll also be using Lion Brand's True Boo. This yarn has a very nice slip and will help to perform the telescoping function. To add color to the top of our case, we'll be using Karen's Macchiato Cakes. We will also be using 3 crochet hooks, 3.75, 4, and 5 millimeter. You'll need a few stitch markers, a yarn needle, a pair of scissors, an 8-inch zipper, measuring tape, needle and thread. In the description below, there is a link to this Google document that you can print, and this will give you the template you need to cut out the base of your pencil case. For the base, we're using a stiff felt. It's about 4 millimeters thick. It has a sticky side to it. The inside of the pencil case is lined with a 2 millimeter thick stiff felt. I have some cutting tools here. I'm using a cutting mat and a rotary cutter and a straight edge, but you can also do this with a pencil, a ruler, and some craft scissors. Before we get started today, let's have another look at our yarn. When you're designing your pencil case, I would recommend that you start with the Macchiato Cakes. Choose your favorite colors and then go over to Wool Ease and pick a base color that really complements your top color. And then when you come in with the True Boo, you might want to pick a matching color, or you might want to add a little contrast. All of these materials, along with some helpful links, are listed for you in the description below. We are going to begin our project today by crocheting the base and the body of our pencil case. We'll need our Wool Ease yarn, some stitch markers, a 3.75 millimeter crochet hook, a yarn needle, scissors, our template, our base material. I'm also using craft scissors on that base material, and we'll have a pencil and a measuring tape. Let's get started by cutting out our base insert. In the description below, there is a link to a Google document that will allow you to print off this template. Once you have your template, go ahead and cut out the shape following along the outside of the black outline. Now we need our base material. Our base material is this heavy-duty black felt. It's about 4 millimeters thick. It has a sticky back. I have included a link to the product that I'm using, but you could also repurpose some nice sturdy plastic, perhaps from some packaging. I would recommend going with something that is waterproof. If I lay my template this way, I could get 2 bases out of this one sheet of felt. I'm going to line up my template to one edge and then just use a pencil to trace around the shape. Once I have my shape transferred onto the base material, I'm using craft scissors. Don't use your good sewing scissors here or your good fabric scissors. Use your craft scissors to cut out this felt, especially since there is glue on one side. We are kind of starting off with some arts and crafts here, but once you have completed your 4 by 2.5 inch base insert, you can set that aside, and we'll be getting back to that in just a few minutes. It is time to break out your Wool Ease yarn and your 3.75 millimeter crochet hook. We're going to start today by crocheting the base of our telescoping pencil case. We are also going to be using one side of the base as the gauge for this project. We begin by chaining 5. I like to work my row 1 into the back bumps, but you can also work into the side of these stitches. So for row 1, we're going to work 2 single crochets in the second chain from the hook. Here's one, and then back into that same stitch. Here's a second one, and now we're going to work a single crochet into each of the next 2 stitches. 1 and 2, and now there's just 1 stitch left, and we're going to work 2 single crochets into this last stitch. This will give us a total of 6 stitches for row 1, and at the end of row 1, we will chain 1 and turn. For row 2, we're going to work 2 single crochets in the first stitch, and then we're going to work 1 single crochet into each of the next 4 stitches. And finally, we'll work 2 single crochets in the last stitch, chain 1 and turn. Row 2 will have a total of 8 stitches. The right side of your work is facing you on the even numbered rows. Here we go into row 3, work 2 single crochets into the first stitch, and then single crochet into each of the next 6 stitches. Two single crochets in the last stitch, chain 1 and turn. Row 3 has a total of 10 stitches. Row 4 is our last increase row. We're going to work 2 single crochets in that first stitch, and then single crochet in each of the next 8 stitches. Two single crochets in the last stitch, and then chain 1 and turn. Row 4 has a total of 12 stitches. For rows 5 through 16, we're going to work a single crochet in each stitch across, chain 1 and turn at the end of each row. Each of these rows will have a total of 12 stitches. Here's a quick look at the fabric after crocheting row number 6, 4, 5, and 6. I'm going to continue on and come back after I finish row 16. And as you can see, I have time traveled us there. We have a total of 16 rows now, and we're ready to chain 1 and turn and head into row 17. Row 17 begins by single crocheting 2 together. To do so, insert your hook into the first stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, and now insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, then yarn over and pull through all 3 remaining loops on your hook. Now we're going to single crochet into each of the next 8 stitches. And then we'll work a single crochet 2 together over the last 2 stitches. At the end of row 17, chain 1 and turn, and this row will have a total of 10 stitches. Row 18 begins by single crocheting 2 together, and then we're going to single crochet in each of the next 6 stitches. When we come to the last 2 stitches of the row, we're going to single crochet those 2 stitches together, and then we're going to chain 1 and turn. Row 18 has a total of 8 stitches. Row 19, we're beginning with that single crochet 2 together, and then we're going to single crochet in each of the next 4 stitches. And then when we come to those last 2, we're going to single crochet 2 together to finish off this row of 6 stitches. We'll chain 1 and turn. Row 20 is our last row, and it is a short one. We're going to single crochet 2 together, then single crochet in each of the next 2 stitches, and then single crochet 2 together. Row 20 has a total of 4 stitches, and when you reach the end, you can cut your working yarn and then yarn over and pull it through that last loop on your hook. We need to make 2 of these shapes, but first we're going to use this one as the gauge for our project. As you can see, it measures 4.5 inches or about 11.5 centimeters long. When I turn it over here, you can see it's 3 inches or about 7.5 centimeters wide. Please adjust your hook size if necessary to obtain this gauge. You can see that when I set our felt insert on top of the base shape, it's larger than the felt insert by about 1/4 of an inch all the way around. If you recall, the right side of our fabric was facing us on the even numbered rows. You can turn your fabric over and mark the wrong side. I also wanted to take this opportunity to show you how easy it is to use a scrap piece of yarn if you don't happen to own stitch markers. Simply fold your scrap piece of yarn in half, and then you can insert your crochet hook into whatever space or stitch that you want to mark. Latch on to the fold of your scrap yarn with your crochet hook and pull it through the space or the stitch. Yarn over with both ends and then pull those ends through that loop. This creates a slip knot that pulls out easily when you're done with your stitch marker. In truth, these base shapes are pretty reversible, so if you can't figure out the right side from the wrong side, don't worry too much about that. I did want to share how to use scrap yarn as a stitch marker because that is just a handy little trick to have up your sleeve, and let's face it, we always have some yarn on hand. Once you've created a base shape that matches our gauge for this project, go ahead and crochet that second base shape. Do not cut your working yarn when you finish your second base shape because we're going to continue on from this point and assemble the base of our case. We are going to do this by making a little base sandwich. So you can see I have the wrong side facing up on one of the base pieces. And now I'm going to go ahead and remove the sticky back from our base insert. And then I'm just going to use that to stick it onto this base shape, but I'm going to go ahead and tuck in the loose ends first. I'm not pulling them tight, but there's really no need to weave in these loose ends. They will tuck in nicely right under that base. This means we don't have to weave in these loose ends, and it saves us just a little bit of work in the future. So you can see I'm just centering this base as neatly onto the base shape. I'm going to work my way around and make sure I have about 1/4 inch of fabric sticking out from all angles. When I'm happy, I'm giving it a little bit of a press and just making sure that that stays in place. And now I can take the other base shape, sandwich it on so the wrong sides are facing each other, with the insert in the middle, and now we're going to go ahead and crochet these 2 sides together. So with that working yarn, I'm going to chain 1. I'm going to hold my sandwich and turn the whole thing over, and we're going to begin by working across the 4 stitches along the short side of our base. You're going to be working through both layers of fabric as we do this, so both layers of fabric throughout this assembly process, and you're simply going to work 1 single crochet in each of the next 4 stitches. Now it's time to work our way across the long side. We're going to be working 18 single crochets evenly across, working into the end of each row. Only we're going to be skipping the first row and the last row. Remember, these base shapes have a total of 20 rows. So if we're skipping the first and the last, there are 18 rows in the middle. So you've got those 4 stitches along the short side. You skip the end of that first row, work 1 single crochet into the end of each of the next 18 rows, and then we're going to skip the last row. This can definitely feel a little bit awkward. Just take your time, go row by row. The main thing to focus on is that both of your pieces of fabric are lining up and you're working through the same end row on each corresponding piece of base fabric. You can see that we're coming up to the end of this side. It's always a good idea to double check your stitch count. It's nice to do it as you go rather than get to the end of this whole assembly and then realize that you were a stitch off somewhere. Before we do the next short side, I'm going to go ahead and tuck in this other loose end right into the base. And now we can finish off our assembly by working 1 single crochet into each of the next 4 stitches. So we're just working our way across the short side of our oval shape. And then it'll be time to work across the other long row. I'm going to go ahead and time travel to the end. As you can see, before I cut my working yarn, I am double checking my stitch count. Having an accurate stitch count is very important as we head into the body of the telescoping pencil case. So make sure that you have a total of 44 single crochets in this round. And you can also see that I am marking the very first stitch of the round, and I'm just going to use that as a guide as I work my invisible finish off. So I have cut my working yarn, and then you just pull on that last loop and pull that working yarn right through that last stitch, and then thread it onto your yarn needle. You're going to skip the first stitch of the round and insert your needle under both the front and back loops of the next stitch. Then you're going to bring this back to the very last stitch of the round and insert your needle between the front and back loops of that last stitch, sending it towards the back side of your work. There's also a little thread right behind the back loop that I also like to catch with my needle. It just adds some extra security and holds that stitch in place. When you pull the excess yarn, don't pull it until it's 100% tight. Pull it until it forms the appearance of a regular sized stitch on the front of your work. Then you can go ahead and weave in this loose end on the wrong side of your work. Just to be clear, the right side of the base was facing as you were crocheting this round. I did place a stitch marker on the wrong side. This is going to become the inside of the pencil case. I always make 3 passes with my needle when I'm weaving in my loose ends. That is going to make for a very secure hold. And now we can have a look at the base of our case. It's nice and sturdy. It's going to perform its job really well and make sure that our pencil case can stand up tall. And before we actually make the body of our case, I want to do one more thing. I want to take 4 stitch markers. We're going to place 2 stitch markers in the center 2 stitches of both of the short sides of the base shape. There should be a total of 22 stitches across the long sides when you're counting from stitch marker to stitch marker. So just take a moment, make sure those stitch markers are as centered on the short sides as you possibly can get them, and make sure there's a total of 22 stitches across the long side from stitch marker to stitch marker. These stitch markers are going to set us up for success as we go into the body of the telescoping pencil case. There are 22 stitches across each of the long sides, and we're going to be making the body of the case in 2 halves. So we're going to be using these stitch markers as our beginning and ending points for each side of the body of the case. This is a good time for a break. Hit the pause button, stretch those fingers, get some water before we head into the next stage of our project, the body of our telescoping pencil case. I hope you enjoyed a nice break, but of course the tutorial must go on. So here is our base shape. We have a stitch marker marking what's going to be the inside of the case right here. This will be the outside of the case or the right side facing. We're going to continue with our wool ease yarn and the same hook that you have been using. We're going to start with the stitch marker on the right and work our way across the long side of our base shape. For row 1, we're going to join with a single crochet at this stitch marker. To do so, insert your hook into that stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, and then yarn over and pull through 2. That is a joining or a standing single crochet. After that, you are simply going to work 1 single crochet into each of the next 21 stitches, and then you'll chain 1 and turn. Remember that each one of these sides will have a total of 22 stitches. These stitches can feel a little bit tight, especially as we work our way around the curves. I just wanted to note that. In fact, you might be feeling this a bit over the first few rows. We're attached to that very firm base, and it's just not allowing a lot of give in the fabric. As the length of the fabric grows, this eases up and it does get a lot easier. So I just wanted to let you know that if you're struggling a little bit, it will get easier as we get a few rows in. All that being said, try to stick with a nice middle of the road tension. Sometimes when work is harder, our stitches get tighter. And as you can see, while I've been chatting away here, we have made it to the final stitch of this row, and I am double checking my stitch count to make sure that I have a total of 22 stitches before I chain 1 and turn. Here we are on row 2. We're going to start by working a single crochet into the first stitch and then working under the front loop only of the next stitch. We're going to work a single crochet. Now we begin our repeating pattern. You're going to single crochet in the next stitch, and then you're going to front loop only single crochet in the stitch after that, and then go back to the beginning of that repeat. So we're just single crocheting across, but every other stitch is worked under the front loop only. Just take your time with this. Sometimes when you reach your hook under just the front loop, you can accidentally split the plies on the thread. So just watch out for that as you go. And we're going to work our way across until only 2 stitches remain. We're going to single crochet in each of those last 2 stitches and then chain 1 and turn. Here we are on row 3, and you'll note that the right side of our work is facing us when we are on the odd numbered rows. For row 3, we're going to start by working a single crochet in the first stitch, and then we're going to work a single crochet in the next stitch, and then start our repeating pattern. Our next stitch is a half double crochet that is worked into that unworked back loop from the previous row. Yarn over, insert your hook from bottom to top underneath that back loop, yarn over, pull up a loop, and then yarn over, pull through all three. Then we're going to skip the next stitch of our current row, the one behind that half double crochet, and single crochet in the next stitch. Then back to that repeating pattern. Yarn over, insert your hook under that unworked back loop, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through three, skip the next stitch, and then single crochet in the stitch after that. We're going to repeat this pattern all the way across. After your last single crochet, chain one and turn. For row 4, we begin by working a single crochet into the first stitch. You might notice that the stitches are curving away from you just a little bit. Keep that in mind as you work across these rows. Single crochet in the next stitch, and then we're going to front loop only, single crochet in the next stitch, single crochet in the stitch after that. And then we go back to the beginning of that repeat. Front loop only, single crochet in the next stitch, single crochet in the stitch after that. We're going to work this repeat all the way across. I have time traveled to the end of row 4. We're working that chain 1 and turn, and now we're ready to begin row 5. I love that you can already see the texture coming into our fabric. For row 5, we're going to single crochet in the first stitch, and then the next stitch is our half double crochet into the unworked back loop from the previous row. We skip a stitch and then we start our repeating pattern by working a single crochet into the next stitch, and then that half double crochet into the next unworked back loop, skip the next stitch of the current row, and then go back to the beginning of the repeat. We'll continue this repeat all the way across until only 2 stitches remain. At the end of the row, you'll work a single crochet into each of those last 2 stitches and then chain 1 and turn. I'm actually placing a stitch marker into my loop so that we can have a look at our work so far. So we've just completed rows 1 through 5 on one side of the body of our pencil case. Before we carry on, it's very important that you measure the width of this side of your pencil case. Use a tape measure and wrap it around that curve, and the width should measure just as close to 6 inches as you can get it to be. The sizing really is important in this project, so if yours is measuring quite a bit longer or shorter, it is worth it to go ahead and take the time to redo these first 5 rows. So many things can affect the tension of our work, from the mood we're in, whether or not we're hungry or well rested. You likely do not need to change your hook size, but if yours is quite a bit shorter, 5 to 5.5 inches, you need to relax your tension just a little bit. Or if it's a little bit too long, 6.5 inches, then you need to firm up that tension just a touch. We also need to consider that our tension needs to be the same for both sides of the body. Our strategy for achieving this is to actually work both sides simultaneously. So you can see that right now I'm working from the center pull end of my wool ease skein. I'm going to go ahead and take off the paper here and find the other end of this yarn. So I'm going to be using both ends of this one skein of yarn, and with one end I'm going to be working one side, and with the other end I'm going to be working the other side of the body of my case. Of course, if you happen to have an extra skein of wool ease laying around, you could use 2 skeins of yarn, and that would mean that you wouldn't have to worry about those 2 ends getting twisted up as you work these sides. So we've already started our first side, and with the right side of the base facing us, we're going to join the other end of our skein of yarn with a single crochet to this stitch marker. Remember, for row 1, we're going to work 1 single crochet in each stitch across. At the end of row 1, you should have a total of 22 stitches, and I do recommend that you double check your stitch count before you chain 1 and turn. For the pattern directions for rows 1 through 5, you can go back and follow along with the first side, and I've also written them out for you in the description below. Through the magic of editing, I am just finishing up row 5, and I want to measure this side as well and make sure it's measuring in right about at 6 inches. So far, it looks like I'm right about where I need to be. If we look at our base and the beginning of our sides, there is a bit of a gap on either end, but this should not be a cause for concern. When we crochet these side seams and pull the sides together, that's really going to add to the structure of the body of our case. Now it's time to continue working on the sides of our case. For rows 6 through 23, we're going to be repeating rows 2 through 5 in that order. To maintain an even tension, I recommend that you do 4 rows on one side. So beginning with one side, you'll work 2, 3, 4, and 5, and then you'll flip to the other side of your work. And on this side, you'll work rows 2, 3, 4, and 5, and then you go back to the other side. So if you keep going back and forth as you work, not only will your tension stay nice and even, but you'll also be finishing up both sides of the body at the same time. Here are the written directions for rows 2 through 5. You can take a screenshot or pause the video right here and refer to these pattern directions as you work through the body of your telescoping pencil case. I am popping back in. I have the body of my case about 2/3 of the way complete, and I just wanted to take a look at how we're coming along so far. I'm also going to take this opportunity to double check the width measurements of both sides. This first side is right at 6 inches. The second side might be just a teeny bit shy of 6 inches, but it's very close. So I know it's all going to work out just fine. There is a little bit of stretch to this fabric, although this fabric was designed not just to have some texture to it, but to have a little bit more structure and density. Now that we have a little more length in the fabric, it's much easier to see how the side seams are going to come together. I also wanted to take just a second and look at how to count these rows. I named this stitch the carrot stitch, and that is for the shape that's created when we're working those half double crochets through the back loops. They look like little triangle tops. The first row where these carrots present is on row number 3, so you can simply count the rows of carrots, 3, 5, 7, 9, and so on. I just finished row 17, so I'm going to come back when I have both of my sides completed up to row 23. Here I am back again with both of my sides worked through row 23. For row 24, we're going to join our hook back to that last loop, chain 1 and turn, and then just work single crochets in each stitch across. At the end of row 24, do not finish off your work, but repeat row 24 for the other side of the body of your case. You can see that I use stitch markers just to hold that loop in place. That way, if your working yarn gets pulled on, your work does not get pulled out. With both of our sides completed, and before we move on to creating our side seams, I'd like you to take a stitch marker and mark the first and last stitch of both of your row 24s. So the last row on both of these sides, please place a stitch marker in the first and last stitches. Now it's time to turn the body of the case inside out. Remember, the inside is marked by that stitch marker on the inside of the base. So go ahead and turn your work inside out, and then we're going to use our working yarn to single crochet down the sides of our case and joining these sides together. You're just going to want to line up the rows so that each row is lining up from either side. You can see that these end rows almost form what looks like hills and valleys. Hill, valley, hill, valley. Now we're just going to take out that stitch marker that was holding on to our last loop and rejoin our crochet hook, chain 1, and we're going to place our very first stitch at the base of this last stitch and then through the base of the first stitch on the other side. So just go right into the bases of these stitches. Yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, just a regular single crochet. And now we're going to continue working down the side. There's going to be a total of 23 single crochets. We just did 1, so we need to work 22 more. And we're just going through both layers of fabric through the end of each row. There is definitely a little more tension in the fabric as you get close to the base. So over the last 2 or 3 stitches, just take your time and really work hard to make sure you're matching up those end rows so that you're working through the same row on each side of fabric. That way the top of the fabric on the case will rest nice and even. Once you've completed that last stitch, you can go ahead and cut your working yarn and pull it through the final loop. If we turn our work right side out, you can see I'm kind of running my finger along the seam to smooth it out, but everything's looking nice on the right side of the fabric. Turn your work back inside out and repeat this process for the other side. When both of your side seams are complete, you can go ahead and weave in these 4 loose ends. I love that we've worked this project all the way to this point, and so far we've only had 4 loose ends to weave in, even with all of the construction that we've done. Once those loose ends are woven in, the body of your telescoping pencil case is complete. We can go ahead and remove that stitch marker that's marking the inside of the pencil case and then turn our case right side out. I do like to play with the fabric a little bit and sculpt it into shape, but truly the nice thing about our bag at this point is that it already has a really nice amount of structure, and that's before we add the felt insert that's going to give it even more structural integrity. You can see that the height of our bag is measuring in at right about 5.5 inches, and that's going down to the bottom of the base. On the inside, it'll be a little bit closer to 5 inches, and that is all the height we want for this taller telescoping pencil case that is able to hold some of your longer pens, brushes, and accessories. Now that we have the base and body of our case complete, it's time to continue on working on the telescoping portion, also the top fabric, and sewing in a zipper. Here are the materials. We're going to be using the True Boo yarn by Lion Brand, as well as Karen's Macchiato cakes. We'll be using two different crochet hooks, a 5 and a 4 millimeter. I've got a yarn needle, some stitch markers, my scissors. I've got an 8-inch zipper, a needle and thread. I'm also going to be using a ruler. In addition to that, we have our 2 millimeter stiff felt. To cut that felt, we have a couple of options. I happen to own a cutting mat and a rotary cutter, so if you have these in your own craft supplies, you can use these to cut your felt down, but you can also just simply use a ruler or a straight edge. And then I was looking for my pencil and I had put it away in my pencil case. So you need a ruler and just a regular old pencil and a pair of craft scissors. We're going to start today by cutting our felt lining. If you're using a regular pencil and a ruler, you're going to see that I'm measuring 5 inches in on the short side of the felt. So I make a pencil mark on one side and then I do the same thing on the opposite side. I make a little mark at 5 inches in, and then I can use my ruler and simply connect these dots. And then you can go ahead and just draw that line, then take your craft scissors and cut out on that line. If you have a cutting mat, you can simply line up your felt sheet on that cutting mat, set up your straight edge, add the 5-inch mark, and just run your rotary cutter right across. This is going to give you a 5 by 12 inch insert. We're using 2 millimeter stiff felt. I have a link for you below. But for now, we can set our felt insert aside as we head into the crochet. To continue crocheting your telescoping pencil case, you're going to need the True Boo yarn, a 5 millimeter crochet hook, and the base of your case. We are going to be crocheting with the wrong side facing us. In this case, that is the inside. So here is the outside of our case, but we're going to be working from the inside, this stitch marker right here. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit as we head into round 1. We're going to join to the left stitch marker on the right side of our case. I'm just removing that stitch marker that's marking our very first stitch. In round 1, we are going to be working in the back loops only. We are joining with a single crochet, so into the back loop of that first stitch, insert your hook, yarn over and pull up a loop, then yarn over and pull through 2. So that is our single crochet join. And now we're going to work 1 half double crochet into each stitch around. To work a half double crochet, yarn over, insert your hook into the back loop of the next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, and then yarn over and pull through all 3 loops on your hook. We're going to be working half double crochets in the back loops all the way around. They're going to be a total of 44 stitches. I'm going to come back and meet you when we get to the other side of our case. In the interest of keeping it real, I do find True Boo yarn to be a little challenging to work with. It's an 8-ply yarn that does not have a lot of twist. It's very easy for those plies to separate. I find that I have to concentrate a little bit harder when I'm working with this yarn, although it does have the perfect slip for this project, and we're only going to be working with it for 9 rounds. As with anything, once you get a few stitches in, you will find your flow, and I have carried us over to the other side of our pencil case where we have our 2 marked stitches. Our side seam is right between these 2 stitch markers, and we're going to skip right over that side seam. So you're going to work a half double crochet into the back loop of 1 stitch marker, skip over the side seam, and then work a half double crochet in the back loop of the next stitch marker. Then you have nothing left to do but to continue working these half double crochets in the back loops all the way around. Once again, this round is going to have a total of 44 stitches. I'm going to continue to work round 1, and I will meet you back at the last stitch marker. Here I am just working on the last couple of stitches of round 1. The last stitch is going to go into the back loop of that stitch marked by the stitch marker. And then I'm just going to place a stitch marker in my loop so I can remove my hook and double check my stitch count. Your stitch count is going to remain the same throughout the top portion of the telescoping pencil case, with the exception of the very last row. I do recommend stopping periodically and double checking and making sure that you have 44 stitches there. I think especially when you're working with the True Boo, this is a slippery yarn and sometimes a stitch can get away from you. Rounds 2 through 7 are nice and straightforward. You're going to work a half double crochet into the first stitch, kind of hold that beginning tail and it'll show you that standing single crochet. You're working under both the front and back loops, so we're working through these stitches as we normally would. Complete that half double crochet and then mark this stitch. We're going to be marking the first stitch of every round. Once you've completed that first stitch, you'll work a half double crochet in each stitch around. So you're just going to continue this for rounds 2 through 7, marking the first stitch of each round, checking your stitch count from time to time, and then I will meet you back here at the end of round 7. Here we go. Let's count these rows. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. I know I am sounding like a broken record, but this is also a really good time to double check that stitch count, especially because in row 8, we're going to be setting up our kind of telescoping function. Row 8 is an important row. The nature of working in the round is that your stitches will shift in one direction. If you locate your side seam, you can see that the last stitch of row 7 is not directly on the side. So we are going to begin round 8 by working a half double crochet in each of the next 5 stitches. That is just going to bring us in alignment with our side seam. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. This will bring us to our side seam. We're in alignment now, and our next stitch is going to be the first stitch of round 8. In round 8, we are going to be working in the front loops only. Before we work the first stitch, I would like you to place a stitch marker in the back loop of this first stitch. It's just kind of hard to find that back loop again once you've worked in the front loop with this slippery yarn. So with that back loop marked, I'm going to work a half double crochet in the front loop of our first stitch, and then I'm going to mark this half double crochet as the first stitch of our round. Then we're going to continue to work in the front loops only as we work a half double crochet in each stitch around. I'm going to meet you back here on the last stitch of round 8. Here we are at our very last stitch, and before we work our half double crochet into the front loop, I want to go ahead and mark the back loop of the last stitch, just like we marked the back loop of the first stitch. We're going to be using these stitch markers a little bit later on, and they're going to be really helpful to our process. So once we have that stitch marker in place, then we can yarn over, work our last half double crochet into the front loop of the last stitch, and then we're ready to move on to round 9. You'll be happy to know that round 9 is just a round of half double crochet, working through both the front and the back loops. Mark the first stitch and then just continue to work 1 half double crochet in each stitch around. I'm going to meet you once again on the last stitch, because on the last stitch of round 9 we are going to be changing yarn. Once again, I have time traveled to the end of the round, and I have just a couple stitches left in round 9. Once we get to that last stitch, it's time to get your macchiato cakes. This is the yarn that we're using for the top of our case. On that last stitch, yarn over, insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, and then you can drop the true boo and yarn over with the macchiato cakes and pull through the last 3 loops on your hook. So we have just successfully changed yarns. I'm going to go ahead and pop a stitch marker in this loop so we can have a look at our work. If you lay out your pencil case flat, the true boo or telescoping section of your pencil case will measure at right about 3 inches. We have a lot going on at this side seam. We have our beginning tail from the true boo. We have these 2 stitch markers marking the back loops of the first and last stitches of row 8. We've got our ending tail of the true boo and the beginning tail of the macchiato cakes. We are going to do some yarn maintenance in just a couple of minutes, but for right now, we're just sort of taking inventory of everything that we've got going on. At long last, it's now time to crochet the top of our telescoping pencil case. We are going to continue working with our macchiato cakes yarn, but we are switching crochet hooks. Be sure to switch to a 4mm crochet hook. Rounds 10 and 11 are rounds of straight half double crochet. Remember to mark the first stitch of each round. If it seems strange that we used a 5mm hook on that true boo, which is a size 3 yarn, and now we're using a 4mm hook on the macchiato cakes, which is a bulky or size 5 yarn, this is intentional. With the true boo, we were looking to make a more open weave or mesh style fabric, and now that we're working with the bulky yarn, I want this fabric to be more dense in the same way that I was creating a dense fabric with the body of the pencil case. This doesn't mean to make the stitches tighter. You want to keep a nice, relaxed, middle of the road tension. But just by virtue of using a smaller hook with a bulkier yarn, you're going to get a fabric that has a little more structure to it, and that is a bit more on the dense side. We are definitely doing a little bit more of a dance with our sizing and tension on this project. Now that we're done with round 11, let's have another look at our pencil case. I'm going to lay it out flat and then grab my ruler. The body is measuring at right about 5.5 inches. The middle section is right about 5, and then the top section is a little bit wider, about 5 3/4 inch. Don't be worried that your midsection is that much more narrow, because our mesh fabric gives this section a lot of stretch. It's actually nice for it to start off being a little bit more narrow, because over time it will stretch out just a little bit. Before we move on, it's time for that yarn maintenance and the weaving in of our loose ends. Welcome back and welcome to round 12. For round 12, we are going to be crocheting in the back loops only. We're going to work 1 half double crochet in each of the next 43 stitches. Take that moment to mark your first stitch and then continue to work these half double crochets in the back loops only. I'm going to meet you at the last stitch. Notice that I said 43 stitches and not 44, and that's because in the last stitch, instead of a half double crochet, we're going to be working a single crochet. Here we are on the last stitch of round 12, and once again into the back loop only of this last stitch, you'll be working a single crochet. We are just shortening this stitch to kind of bring the lines of these unworked front loops together. For rounds 13 and 14, work a half double crochet in each stitch around. Do take the moment to mark the first stitch of each round, and each one of these rounds will have a total of 44 stitches. I have just finished round 14. Let's have another look at our work. So these unworked front loops are from round 12. So this is 12, 13, and 14. Those unworked front loops actually become the top fold of our telescoping pencil case. And then if you like, you can go ahead and take a moment and manipulate that center fabric so you can really get a sense of how your project is coming together and how well the fabrics are fitting over each other. We've only done a few rounds of the macchiato cakes, and so this is a good opportunity to check your sizing and make sure the top of your telescoping pencil case is not too tight. Let's resume crocheting with round 15, and the very first thing we're going to do on round 15 is to work 1 half double crochet in each of the next 3 stitches. Once again, we're bringing our work to the side seam. We are going to be connecting this round to those unworked back loops from round 8. If you flip over your work and you look at those stitch markers that we placed in the first and last stitch of round 8, the very next stitch should line up to that first stitch marker. So let's continue on with round 15. We are going to be working 1 half double crochet into each stitch of round 15 and into the corresponding unworked back loop from round 8. Allow the fabric to bend as you insert your hook underneath that first marked back loop from round 8, and then complete your first half double crochet. Let's go ahead and mark our first stitch. To work this round, you're just working a half double crochet in each stitch around, going through the next stitch of round 15 and the next unworked back loop from round 8. The first 2 of these stitches are going to be worked into those marked stitches, but then from the 3rd stitch on, you're just going to be working into the next stitch from the current round 15 and the next unworked back loop from round 8. As you're doing this, go ahead and allow your work to fold, allow the top edge to meet this round 8. This is an essential part of the construction of our telescoping pencil case. I just zoomed in a little bit so I can show you another stitch up close, and then I'm going to meet you at the end of round 15. I'm just working my last couple of stitches of this round. As I'm preparing to work the last stitch, I'm noticing that I really kind of hid that stitch marker inside the fabric. I'm going to have to dig that out in a second. And it can also be a little bit hard to find that very last back loop. It's there, it's just kind of hiding in the fold of the fabric at this point. So just take your time, find that very last stitch, and then you've made it through this round. I'm going to go ahead and place a stitch marker in that last loop. I'm going to leave that one there and the stitch marker marking the very first stitch of this round, but I'm going to go ahead and remove these 2 stitch markers from round 8. This is a really good time to take a look at your work and kind of orient yourself. With round 15, we have connected the top to the telescoping fabric, and now we're actually working on the right side of our work. We started working with the inside of the case facing us, but by working over that fold, now as we continue to crochet, the right side of our work is facing us. We are working on the outside, topmost layer of our pencil case. Let's go ahead and rejoin our hook to our work. For rounds 16 through 22, we're going to work 1/2 double crochet in each stitch around. Continue to mark the first stitch of each round. It's just going to help you keep track of these rounds as you go. Each one of these rounds will have a total of 44 stitches. It is definitely feeling a little more awkward to crochet this on the tabletop now that our pencil case is growing. This is a lot more comfortable when it's sitting in your lap, so forgive me if I'm sort of awkwardly manipulating this project as I struggle to be able to show you what I'm doing here. I'm just trying to figure out what is the best way to have the case sitting so that I can actually crochet also without covering up the text instructions. I will figure this out and I will meet you back here at the end of round 22. Enjoy these few rounds of just straight 1/2 double crochet. I just finished up round 22. Let's go ahead and count our macchiato cakes rounds. So we started with round 10, then 11, and then showing on the front side, here we go, we have 12, 13, 14, 15, and then 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, and 22. Now we're ready for round 23. We're going to work a single crochet in the next stitch, and then we're going to mark this as the first stitch of round 23. We should be 3 stitches before the side seam. To carry on with round 23, we're going to skip the next 2 stitches and then work 7 double crochets in the next stitch. To work a double crochet, yarn over, insert your hook in the stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, then yarn over and pull through 2 loops on your hook, and then yarn over and pull through the remaining 2 loops on your hook. So you're going to work 7 of these double crochets all in this next stitch, and it's going to create the first scallop of our round. Once you complete those 7 double crochets, you're going to skip 1 stitch and then single crochet in the next stitch. That scallop should fall right on the side seam of your pencil case. To continue round 23, skip the next 2 stitches and then work 7 double crochets in the next stitch. There's our second scallop, and now we're going to skip the next 2 stitches, single crochet in the next stitch, skip 2 stitches, and work 7 double crochets in the next stitch. After that scallop, we are once again going to skip 2 stitches, single crochet in the next stitch, and then skip 2 more stitches and work 7 double crochets in the next stitch. Now skip 1 stitch and place 1 single crochet in the next stitch, and now we're at the opposite side seam. Continue by skipping 1 stitch and working 7 double crochets in the next stitch. Now you're going to skip 2 stitches and single crochet in the next stitch, and then skip 2 more stitches and work 7 double crochets in the next stitch. Now we skip 2 stitches once again, single crochet in the next stitch, skip 2, and then work 7 double crochets in the next stitch. Skip 2 stitches, single crochet in the next stitch, skip 2 more stitches and work 7 double crochets in the next stitch. You can see that we are back at our beginning single crochet. Once you finish the 7 double crochets, you're going to skip 1 stitch and then slip stitch to the first stitch and finish off. Insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, and pull that loop through the loop on your hook. Now you can cut your working yarn and pull that working yarn through the final loop. Before we weave in this last loose end, we can have a look at our pencil case. The scallops should fall such that you've got 1 scallop on each side seam, and then there should be 3 evenly across the front and the back of the pencil case. Now we can go ahead and weave in our final loose end, and you can see that I'm doing this on the wrong side of the fabric. We have one more important step before we can call our project complete. It is time to sew in our zipper. The zipper we're using is 8 inches long. It might measure a little bit longer than that. You'll notice that there is about a 1/2 inch at the beginning and end of the zipper before the actual teeth and the hardware of the zipper. You're also going to want to decide which side is the front and which side is the back of your pencil case. I kind of like this side better. I just like the way the colors are blending, so I'm going to call this the front of my case. I'm making sure that those side seams are really lined up on the sides and the scallops are lined up right on those side seams as well. I just want everything laying nice and even before I install my zipper. I'm going to place my zipper so that the beginning is on the left side and I'll be pulling it from left to right. You could also go in the other direction if that's more comfortable for you. You'll notice on most zippers there are some lines or texture in the fabric. You can pick one of these lines to follow as you hand sew your zipper into your pencil case. As far as stitch placement on the pencil case goes, we are going to be working our stitches into the base of round 11. So this is the base of the stitches right below the top fold. Zippers definitely have a knack for feeling a little bit confusing. You can see I'm just lining up my zipper where I want it, and then I'm picking up my whole pencil case and just kind of getting a feel for it, how it's going to go into the case. And what's really going to help out is if I find the very edge and place a stitch marker in that stitch right there, right at the side seam. And then when I begin to hand sew my zipper, I'm going to start on the stitches on either side of that stitch marker. I'm also going to start sewing my stitches onto the zipper itself, just to the side of that zipper hardware. I'm sort of acting it all out and getting comfortable with where I'm placing these stitches even before I get started sewing. When you're comfortable with your zipper and your stitch placement, it's time to go ahead and cut some thread off of your spool. Try to cut enough so you can get across one side of your zipper. I am doubling up my thread to give it more strength and then just doing a simple classic kind of overhand knot at the end of the thread, just allowing it to twist over itself 2 or 3 times to give me a nice little knot. And now it's time to go ahead and dive in. We are starting at this end of the zipper, and I'm going to go ahead and insert the needle from the back side to the top just to attach my thread to the zipper. Now we can start to sew our zipper into the pencil case. So I'm going to insert my needle under the base of the stitch just to the side of my stitch marker. I'm just going under the yarn on the inside of the pencil case and making sure that you can't see the thread that I'm working with on the outside of the pencil case. We want to hide these stitches inside of the case. After I place that stitch on the pencil case, I'm going to come back and work a stitch into the side of the zipper. I'm choosing a line to follow, and I'm making my stitches, maybe just over 1/8 of an inch long. The main thing is to try to make your stitch size consistent throughout. So if your stitches are 1/8 of an inch, try to stick to that, or 1/4 inch. Just do your best to be consistent with your stitch size. So after I work the stitch into the zipper, I'm going to go back and work my needle under the base of the next crochet stitch. Then I'm going back to the zipper and then back to the pencil case. So it's yarn, zipper, yarn, zipper. When you pull on the thread, it will draw the zipper fabric right up next to the fabric or the inside of the pencil case, and you won't even see those threads. They'll be internal to the pencil case and really invisible stitches. I am going to continue to sew on this side of the zipper, and then I'll meet back with you when we get to the opposite side seam. Here we are just finishing up this side. You can see that I took a stitch marker and placed it in the very corner of this side seam as well. I just find them really helpful as guides. On the back side of the zipper, I'm going to go ahead and knot off this thread. I have just enough thread left to place a knot. To knot your thread, just insert your needle under a little bit of thread or fabric. Pull it through, but not all the way, and when there's still a little loop left there, insert your needle through that loop and then pull. And if you do this 2 or 3 times, you'll have a nice little tidy knot, and then you can cut off your excess thread. Now we just need to repeat this same process for the other side of our zipper. As you can see, I'm just finishing up this side and I'm going to go ahead and pass my thread through to the wrong side of the zipper, and I'm taking out that stitch marker at the side seam. Now we have about a 1/2 inch of fabric at the end of the zipper, and I want to tuck that into the pencil case. We really don't want this little bit of fabric sticking out on the side. I'm just going to cross these ends over each other and fold them into the fabric, and then before I cut off my thread, I'm going to work a few stitches through both layers of the fabric, and I'm also tacking it onto the pencil case. So I'm picking up just a little bit of the yarn behind the fabric of the zipper. This is our final step before we can go ahead and knot off this working thread and call ourselves done with our zipper. I am not an expert sewist, so I am presenting this to you to the best of my ability, and I hope it was a clear and easy path for you to follow. Our pencil case is so close to completion, but I really don't want to leave the other end of the zipper just raw like this or bare. So go ahead and grab your macchiato cakes and your 4mm hook, and let's make a little cover for the end of the zipper. We're going to begin this with a magic ring. I'm just taking the beginning tail of my yarn and wrapping it from back to front twice around 2 fingers. Then I'm inserting my hook under the front thread and picking up the back thread and pulling it underneath that front thread. Then I'm yarning over and pulling it through that thread on my hook. This is all going to be a little bit loose feeling, but when you pull on that beginning tail and on your working thread, you'll kind of cinch it up, you'll tighten that little knot on the thread, and this gives us a really handy adjustable loop that we'll be able to pull closed when we're done working our stitches into this magic ring. To continue, we're going to chain 2 and then we're going to work a double crochet into our ring, mark this as our first stitch, and then we're going to go ahead and work 11 more double crochets into the magic ring. To make these double crochets, yarn over and insert your hook into the magic ring, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2, yarn over and pull through 2. Keep working these stitches until you have a total of 12 double crochets worked into your magic ring. If you're uncomfortable using a magic ring, you can start by chaining 3 and then working 12 double crochets into the 3rd chain from your hook. As you can see, I just finished working my last double crochet. I'm removing the stitch marker from the first stitch so that I can slip stitch to this stitch and finish off this round. At this point, you can cut your working yarn, yarn over, and pull the cut in through the final loop on your hook, and now it's time to weave in these loose ends. If you didn't use a magic ring, use that beginning tail to kind of cinch up the hole in the middle of your little round shape as you're weaving in the loose end. Otherwise, if you have a magic ring, you can pull on the beginning tail and it will close the hole in the middle, and then you can go ahead and weave in that loose end. And then we're going to repeat this process a second time, only this time we will not be working that slip stitch to the first stitch. I will meet you at the end of the last double crochet and I'll show you how we're going to bring this whole little piece together. Once you have worked all 12 of your double crochets, you can see that I'm just going to place a stitch marker in this last loop to hold on to it for a minute, because next we're going to be attaching our two little round shapes together. Before we do that though, I want you to go ahead and weave in your beginning tail. I didn't show that entire process because you've seen me do a lot of weaving in this video already. Let's go ahead and jump into our finishing steps. So I have inserted my hook back into that last loop. I'm going to insert my hook through the first double crochet on this round shape, and then with the wrong side of our first round facing us, I'm going to just insert my hook through any one of those 12 double crochets. Yarn over and pull through both layers of fabric, yarn over, pull through two. We are going to work single crochets through each corresponding stitch all the way around these two round shapes until there is just one stitch remaining. When you have worked a total of 11 single crochets through both layers of the fabric and there's just one stitch left, you can go ahead and cut your working yarn. Leave yourself around 10 inches or so for sewing, 10 or 12. You can pull this cut in through the last loop on your hook, but you'll see that I'm just pulling on that last loop and pulling this cut end right through that final stitch. I'm going to be using this tail end to sew our little round shape onto the zipper. I am just curling the ends of the fabric of our zipper kind of under to the back side and making it small enough so I can feed it into the little hole that we've left by leaving that last stitch unworked. It's just enough space to insert your zipper into the little round shape. I have threaded this end of yarn onto a fairly sharp sewing needle. It is a little bit larger than a needle that you'd be using for thread because we are working with a bulky yarn. So you need a needle that has a large enough eye. Now I'm going to keep it real with you. I'm not sure why I decided to sew this on with the yarn, because you can certainly sew this on with your needle and thread, and if I'm being honest, I think that would be a lot easier. The fabric on my zipper is a little more stiff, and so trying to work this bulky yarn through two layers of fabric on the zipper and through the stitches on the round shape, I definitely had to kind of muscle and struggle a little bit to work this yarn through. It also kept wanting to backspin on itself. So this is not the most graceful sewing on of a small shape. Because I'm all about sewing things on so that they last, I am going in and out of the zipper and of the stitches on my little round shape a couple of times before I weave in this loose end. So once I weave in the ending tail, I can snip my yarn, and we can admire our cute little zipper cover. This is how pencil cases are typically designed, with this end of the zipper on the outside. If this end of the zipper was tucked into the fabric, it tends to get in the way of the telescoping function. It gets caught up in those layers of fabric. We have done it. We have made it to the very last step, and thank goodness it's an easy one. If you unzip your pencil case right now and try to pull down that top, it doesn't quite have enough structure in the body of the case, and this is where our 2mm stiff felt that we prepared at the very beginning of this tutorial comes in. You're just going to roll this up into a cylinder. Because it is a thicker felt, it's not going to be a smooth round, and that is absolutely okay. Just roll it up. I'm using my spool of thread just to give me something to wrap it around, but this isn't actually necessary. You can just roll it up into a smallish cylinder and then place it into the body of your telescoping pencil case. I like to have my beginning cylinder be a little bit smaller so I can easily fit it all the way to the bottom of the interior and then allow it to expand. I'll reach my hand in and kind of push on the felt until it expands to fill the size of the inside of the body of the pencil case. It's also nice to line up the cut end on the outside of the felt to one of the side seams. Otherwise, it can appear like a little bit of a crease on the outside of your pencil case, at least while the fabric is fresh. Once I have my felt inside the pencil case, I will kind of bend it a little bit to fit the shape of the pencil case, even kind of pressing on those side seams. Also, as a side benefit, because it is just a piece of craft felt, if it ever gets really dirty or if it ever loses some of its structure, it's very easy to replace. Okay, I'm just kind of playing around a little bit here and putting some of my supplies into the pencil case, just showing off how much room there is in here and how much this pencil case can hold. All zipped up and fully extended, the height of our pencil case is right about 9 inches or 23 centimeters. When you unzip your pencil case and pull that top down, your height should be right around 6 inches or 15 centimeters. When your pencil case is done, you can open and close that zipper a couple of times, pull it up and down, train that telescoping fabric, but it is ready to go into use. So if you're someone who likes to travel with a sketchbook and some charcoal pencils or graphite pencils, a pencil sharpener, and an eraser, this is great for that. I love carrying around taller markers. I happen to be a big fan of the Tombow dual tip markers, and that was a big inspiration for me designing this pencil case because those markers are quite tall and did not fit into the pencil cases that I found on the market. I also love how roomy the pencil case is, that I can have some extra supplies in there, that I can bring a lot of different colors to choose from. If you like to journal like I do, sketch, or I think you could even fit in a little set of watercolors and some brushes, this project is for you. It would be an amazing gift for the artists in your life. I know if I had come up with this design when my kids were young, it would have been full of colored pencils and crayons and probably even a couple of tiny dinosaurs and Tonka trucks. I hope you enjoyed this project. It's definitely a bigger one to take on, but the results are so satisfying. I would love to know what colors you chose for your pencil case. Let me know in the comments below. Also, please hit like and subscribe so you never miss a crochet tutorial. It's also super encouraging to me as a small YouTube channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.